Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite people in history. It's Benjamin Franklin. Particularly, Benjamin visited Ireland in the year 1771. He was 65 years old at the time. He was born in Boston in 1706. He died in Philadelphia in 1790. He finished school at the age of 10 years of age. He was a writer, scientist, inventor, statesman, diplomat, printer, publisher. He was the founding father of the United States. He drafted and signed the Declaration of Independence. As I said, he's known as one of the founding fathers of the United States. It's unfortunate he never actually became the president. But anyway, his inventions include the lightning rod, bifocal, the Franklin stove, and numerous others. He became wealthy printing publications and being a printer himself. So he's quite a quite a man.
Yeah, quite a man is right. And the fact that he just got a couple of years education and finished at 10 and then was helping his father in whatever trade he was in. I think he was in a printer. And but he was and he was of the second wife. His father had a lot of children with the first wife. When she died, he married another lady and had 10 children. And Frank, I think that Benjamin Franklin was the last born in that family. And but he was gifted, as it turned out later on. And he fled to Pennsylvania because of the when he left his brother that was running something, and so he fled to Pennsylvania and began to start and develop his own persona. And really, he did so much good and so much reading and so much involved with what he was at that he nearly was, I'd say, self-taught from the point of view of reading and all the rest of it and absorbing. He had great talent. And as time went on, he began to develop it and he progressed in his career one way and another and produced papers and did all the things that you've said over the years.
Yeah,
When he visited Ireland, he was age 65 now. He did a lot of travelling and he was Postmaster General or something for established by the British. So he wore two hats, if you like. But when he visited Ireland in when he was 65 and in I think 1770, wasn't it 1770 when he visited,
it was
and
1771. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1771, and he there was an Irish Parliament. But the strange thing was, it was called an Irish Parliament, but the majority citizens, which were Catholic and Irish, genuine Irish, weren't allowed to participate. And I think Franklin would have found that not good.
When
And he observed the poor conditions that the Irish people were in mud cabins and hovels that had been reduced from the marvelous education that they were able to enjoy during our own golden age of the island of saints and scholars and education and all the rest of it that we were famous for. So they were deprived of all this and persecuted. But Benjamin Franklin observed the terrible conditions that the Irish people were living in and complained about it. But he was talking to deaf ears, I'm afraid. But he did refer to it, and that the farmers in America, poor farmers in America, were princes by compared to the poor Irish people living in such dreadful conditions. And of course, although he did complain to this Irish, so-called Irish Parliament, inverted commas, it fell on deaf ears because 100 years after that, or less than 100 years, the 1850s, a million of our brothers and sisters died of starvation when the potato crop failed and they had no means to, because they were paying high rent to these absent landlords in a lot of cases. They died of starvation and buried in mass graves. So I think Benjamin Franklin would have noticed the appalling treatment of the Irish people by the British and in this so-called Irish Parliament, which was reserved for this landed class that despised the Irish, that they called themselves this Irish Parliament, and it wasn't really Irish; it was just for the privileged few, shall we say. So Benjamin Franklin, I think, from what he noticed there, it might have sowed the seed for his future then behaviour as a rebel, and he was jailed when he was, at the time. And so he was a founding father for the American Constitution and the American Civil War, the American War of Independence, which was a great gift. And I think he had to support the French because arms were so important. I think he became ambassador to France as well. So he was a very able and talented man, and I believe his picture is on the currency in the United States. And looking at his picture, he looked like a lad that was fond of food, and he he prospered in life, and but he also had, I think, a focus. He was a slave owner for a period, but then he turned against that, and he was one of the early people that demanded that slaves, that people have freedom, the black people that had been slaves, that were entitled to the education and freedom. And another great thing he was responsible for was education in Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, yeah. And then it became the University of Pennsylvania. And one thing that would seem to be a factor, Pennsylvania is named after this Penn family that apparently had control, and people objected to the fact that they were, and their descendants, controlled so much, and they lost their power of doing that, and in Pennsylvania. But the Penn is named after this Penn family that caused a lot of grief, like the landed class that we had in this country that controlled everything and gave nothing to their to the majority Irish people, took the land off them and all the rest of it. So I think Benjamin Franklin, I think perhaps the seed for the freedom of America was sown in his visit to Ireland. That'd be my opinion.
Absolutely. And the thing is that most people associate Irish Parliament with Leinster House. And of course, back then it wasn't Leinster House, it was the Black Bank, what's known now as the Black Bank, Bank of Ireland in College Green. That was the Irish House of Parliament at the
Yeah,
time, and that's where
yeah, the
Benjamin
Bank of
Franklin was.
Ireland. There was a lot of people, in my experience, would not bank with the Bank of Ireland
Really?
because of their charter and the way that they were associated with the British misrule of this country and the harm that they inflicted on our brothers and sisters.
You're
We've
saying
spoken about this before.
Bank of Ireland?
Yeah, well, that was the former Bank of Ireland. That was the House of Parliament.
Oh, yes, yes,
Now,
yes.
yeah, the fact that we're conceded and to have governors, to have a system that's not the same as, we'd say, the Allied Irish Bank, which composed of the National Bank, which was in my time, and the National Provincial Bank, which is another bank. And there was a couple of independent banks, and they all came together under the Allied Irish Bank. That's why it's called Allied Irish Banks.
Okay.
It composed about three, four, or five independent banks that were in the country at the time.
Wow. So there we go. So Benjamin Franklin, anyway, he visited Ireland. As he said that the appearance of general and extreme poverty among the lower people are amazing. That's a quote that we have for him. And then he also wrote to Cushing that Ireland is itself a poor country and Dublin a magnificent city, but the appearance of general extreme poverty among the lower classes are amazing. They live in wretched hovels of mud, as you said already, are clothed in rags and subsist chiefly on potatoes. Our New England farmers of the poorest sort, in regard to the enjoyment of all the comforts of life, are princes when compared to them. Imagine that.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I think his observation of that would have propelled him towards the American Constitution, which he was instrumental in drafting. And he saw what he saw here, the misrule, the British, that he had benefited from it materially, along with all his inventions. But I think when he saw that, it had an effect on his move towards freedom for the United States. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
I
was
think
it.
that,
And
yeah, because he was at a mature age at that point. He was 65 years old.
yeah, well, he was a good age because people didn't have a long lifespan in those times, but he had. So obviously, he was able to enjoy the best of health. And I think when he was abroad for a lot, and I don't know whether his first wife or second wife, first wife, their son died of smallpox, and he kind of reckoned that he should have got inoculation or in whatever it was to prevent that disease. There was even ways of preventing that smallpox that killed a lot of young people all over Europe and in this country as well. When then hunger and poverty killed a lot of young people in this country, even in the early part of the 20th century, living in tenements and all that, very unhealthy environments.
Yeah, I just want to say that in 1977, the American ambassador presented a bust of Benjamin Franklin to the Bank of Ireland to commemorate his visit in 1771. So that was nice. So if anybody wants to see the bust of Benjamin Franklin, it's in the Bank of Ireland in College Green.
On the screen, right? I must
Yeah,
have a look at it.
you must have a look. Yeah.
And I think there you are. It's a memory of his visit to the what was the Irish Parliament in that building
I
that the
think
Bank of Ireland then took over.
I think, that if any politician, wants to be a good, dedicated and decent human being, they would do very well to study Benjamin Franklin.
They would, they would, to see the difficult start that he had
Yeah.
in many ways, but the way that it didn't define him
Hmm.
as it might have a lot of others. He went on for better things. He had talent and he used it to improve himself and read and that. So he really had a great mind with these inventions that he came up with, as you mentioned. And so it just shows you that irrespective of what kind of a bad start you have in life, you can acquire goods. So he'd be a good example in many ways for people that might be disadvantaged. If they have the talent, they will succeed.
You can see there as well. I mean, he invented the bifocal. The bifocal is still used today. It's
Correct.
obviously for reading was very, very important to him. If you remember one thing, if Benjamin Franklin couldn't read, he could not have achieved everything he did.
Correct. And I
Read.
wonder, was he able to read and write even with the couple of years education that he actually got? Because apparently to get an education was an expensive business in those times. They probably had to pay for it or something. But maybe he was able to read and write after that. Because once you have that foundation, that's what the 3 R's. Even if people in my lifetime had to often leave school early, but if they could, they had the 3 R's, read and write, and be able to add up, they had the tools then to improve themselves, even if they didn't get a secondary school education, and a lot didn't. A
Yeah,
lot
the
didn't.
thing, I suppose, look,
Those,
by the age of 10, he was already writing short stories. By the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, he was publishing his own little journals under different names. His brother, he was an apprentice to his brother, and he didn't really get on with the brother, didn't like being an apprentice to him, you know. So what he used to do was he used to sneak stories under, I think it was Dr. Do Good or something, or Do
That's right,
Little or
yeah.
something. Yeah. And he used to send the stories, I think, to the brother or something, and the brother would print them, not knowing that it was it was his own brother, little brother, that was sending them, you know. So he had a big interest in writing at a very, very young age, and
He
he
did.
opened up his own print shop eventually, and that's how he
In
made his
Newton
money.
surgical, but his brother found out that it was him, and problem arose. That's why Benjamin had to flee to Philadelphia because his brother had an angry streak.
It's a very, very, very inspiring story, and he was a brave little boy when you think about it. I mean, as an elder statesman, he was amazing, but he was a brave little kid, and he was kind of
It was
ingenious that he outsmarted the brother. Okay, to print his
he did,
stories.
and it was printed, and people liked it. So he was able to sort of do things even if he had to use a pseudonym. He did a lot of that during his early part of his career, and it created good interest and a bit of jollity because that could have been absent them times. So he had the good of others in his makeup. Even when he was here, he had the good of, and he observed the wretched conditions that our Irish brothers and sisters were living in, and he could have just ignored it and carried on, but he didn't. He spoke about it, and I think it defined him to pursue freedom in the United States because he could see the effect of the misrule from of the British for the vast majority of people in this country, and of course they were denied an education, and that's the only way that you can get on. This is why our famous liberator Daniel O'Connell, who became a barrister and as a Catholic, it was, I don't know how he managed it. It was a great achievement on his part, but he was the one, and he had trouble from the other crowd that objected to him doing what he was doing, but he carried on. He was another Benjamin Franklin for us, Daniel O'Connell, the famous the liberator, and that's why O'Connell Street is named after him.
Very good, John Malone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Albert.